In this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to train for the handstand push-up. Now, this is one of the intermediate level skills in calisthenics, and it can be a pretty difficult movement to learn, but just training for it alone is going to build you a lot of strength in your shoulders, your triceps, and your upper chest. If you're a complete beginner to calisthenics, I would first recommend watching my previous video, The Complete Guide to Calisthenics for Beginners, as this will go over a lot of the fundamentals that you will need to know before you start skill training. Also, on top of this, you do not necessarily need to be able to hold a handstand to learn the handstand push-up, as this can actually be one of the ways you get your first handstand, although it may not necessarily be the easiest way. That being said, if you can do 25 plus push-ups, 15 plus dips, all with good form, then you're ready to start defying gravity with your hands. Mobility requirements. A lot of these exercises require a decent amount of overhead shoulder mobility, so being able to reach up above your head with your arms is extremely important for maintaining a good stacked line for a handstand. Next, a lot of the earlier exercises require a good amount of flexibility in your hamstrings, so do not skip your hamstring stretches, as they will help with this. Finally, the handstand push-up requires you to tuck in your elbows and open up your shoulders in an overhead position. If you happen to be lacking flexibility in any of these areas, I highly recommend doing a couple of sets during your warm-up before doing your strength movements, as this will help expand your range of motion and decrease the amount of pain you may feel, as well as decrease your risk of injury. Now, once you are aware of any mobility or flexibility limitations, you are ready to jump into the strengthening and balance progressions. The exercises I'm about to go over can be viewed as levels in which you should meet a certain amount of requirements before progressing onwards to the next level, in order to guarantee safety and consistent progress. Now, the following exercises can all be done on the floor with no equipment, pretty much anywhere you want, but I do recommend getting yourself a pair of parallettes, as using these can allow your wrists to be in a more neutral position, giving you more control while you are balancing, and can also help prevent your wrists from being a limiting factor when training. They will also give you a slight further range of motion, allowing you to go deeper with your movements and therefore promoting more growth. I personally would recommend a mixture of floor and parallel training to build your all-around ability. So starting with level 1, we have the Pike push-up, which, much like a regular push-up, you want to make sure your elbows are tucked in around a 45-degree angle rather than flaring them out. Something that can help with this is to think about turning your elbow pits forward when you are doing them. If you are new to the Pike push-up, you can start in a normal push-up position and slowly bring your feet forward over time, or try bringing your feet slightly closer to your hands with each rep, while keeping your legs as straight as possible. By bringing your feet closer to your wrists, you are inverting your upper body more and more and are actually getting closer to what an actual handstand push-up feels like. When you go down, you want to bring your nose to a point in front of your hands rather than directly in between, and when you come back up, you want to tuck your head in between your shoulders and reach high with your arms as much as you can. Be patient with this progression, as whatever form you use for the Pike push-up will also determine the form that you are more likely to use for the handstand push-up. To help establish good habits, you should film yourself from the front and side angles to make sure you are using the correct form. In this stage, you should also start getting used to what it feels like to balance your entire body weight on your hands. The easiest way to start with this is by performing the movement known as the frog stand, where you rest your inner thigh onto your elbows with your arms slightly bent. You can also try experimenting with micro movements in your wrist to stop yourself from falling. Once you can comfortably perform 3 sets of 12 of pike push-ups with good form, as well as a 15+ second frog stand hold, you can move on to the next level and the next progressions, which will be the elevated pike push-up. Find a surface in which you can prop your feet up while still keeping your legs straight and keeping your upper body form the same as you were before. By elevating your feet on progressively higher and higher surfaces, you'll be shifting more of your body weight onto your arms and shoulders, strengthening them to be able to push your entire body weight in the future. At this point, you can also start to work on your handstand and your balance by performing wall-assisted handstands with your stomach facing the wall. Some things to consider here are leaving some space between the wall and your hands in order to prevent yourself from falling over, and you will also want to focus on locking out your arms, elevating your shoulders and looking in front of your hands. Try to stack your hips directly above your wrists and only keep your toes against the wall with your core tight. Set a goal of around 3 sets of 60 seconds of wall-assisted handstand holds and 3 sets of 12 reps for elevated pike push-ups, or moving on to the next level. Now, if you have never done a handstand before, your brain and body might have this natural response of panic whenever you enter an upside down position due to the fear of falling. Now, I'm going to be real with you and say that you will most likely fall several times during your handstand journey, but I am going to teach you how to fall safely and in a controlled manner. Learning how to bail out of a handstand and actually practicing falling is the best way to get over this fear. So what I do is, if I feel like I'm about to fall over in a handstand, I would pick a side to fall towards instead of falling straight through. Whichever side I want to land on, I release my arm pressure for that side, so I end up in a almost half cartwheel, so that I always land on my feet. Practice this until you do not have the panic moment while upside down anymore. Also, another thing to note is with your balance in the handstand, with your wrists, you want to be gripping the floor, not just laying your palm flat. Like with your heels, if you find yourself leaning forward, you will want to press down with the front of your hand and fingers, and vice versa. If you feel yourself falling backwards, you will want to apply pressure to the back of your hand around the lower palm. Once you have completed the level 2 requirements and practiced the mentioned things, you can then move on to the next progression, which is going to be wall-assisted handstand push-ups. From the wall-assisted handstand position, you want to slowly descend, focusing on only keeping your toes sliding against the wall and maintaining a straight body line, and aim to touch your nose in front of your hands, just like you would a pike push-up. If you are doing this properly and not flaring out your elbows, your body should be moving in a slightly diagonal movement pattern rather than a straight up and down. At this point, you are pushing pretty much your entire body weight with your hands in a handstand push-up motion, so all that is really left is just learning the balance aspect to the handstand. You can begin to practice the balancing motion of a freestanding handstand by lifting your legs slowly off of the wall from the wall-assisted handstand position. Make sure your hips are stacked directly above your wrists and start lifting your legs off of the wall one by one until the point where you can hold a suspended handstand position without any assistance. Once you are able to fairly consistently hold the freestanding handstand position for around 5 to 10 seconds, along with 3 sets of 12 reps of wall-assisted handstand push-ups, you can then move on to the next progression level. By this point, you should have enough strength in your pike push-ups to start to lift your feet off of the ground at the bottom, as your hands will be directly under your center of gravity. For you to lift off of the ground, you are going to want to lean forward enough at the bottom position so that your legs naturally pick off of the ground due to most of your body weight being towards the front. The goal here is to hold this floating pike position for as long as you can. When you get comfortable enough balancing in this position, you are going to want to slowly start extending your legs out behind you so as to not throw off your balance, to enter what is called the bent arm handstand. Try to keep your head above your hands so that it will be easier to push into a regular handstand from this position. Now you should be ready to attempt the upward motion of the handstand push-up with the help of some momentum. Enter the floating pike as you would normally, but now try to kick upwards with your legs to generate momentum and at the same time push up as hard as you can with your arms. At first you might not shoot up into a perfectly vertical handstand and you will probably fall into one of two categories: overshooting or undershooting. Overshooting is usually caused by too much of an arch in your lower back or a bend in your legs when reaching the handstand position. Make sure to keep your abs activated and your legs straight to prevent this from happening. Undershooting can be caused by having your elbows too far behind your wrists, or you are extending your legs and arms too early before allowing your hips to stack vertically over your shoulders, or you lack overhead shoulder mobility to reach that last portion of a handstand. To prevent this, when you are in the uppermost range of motion and are about to lock out your arms, think about pushing your shoulders up to your ears and also pushing from the back of your hand. After practicing this movement for a while, you will be able to progressively go up slower and slower and in a more controlled fashion over time. And you will be able to lock in a handstand at the top if you have been practicing your handstand holds off the wall as well. At this point, you can also start practicing the descending motion of a handstand push-up by either starting from the wall and lowering down slowly without any assistance, or you can try adding a negative after you kick up into a handstand from a pike push-up. Over time, focus on doing the negative portion of the handstand push-up slower and slower, and eventually you will be able to pause in the bent arm handstand position. Finally, if you are able to enter a handstand, lower down, and then push back up without losing your balance, you have achieved the handstand push-up. Congratulations. Now I will go over some conditioning and accessory work you can do. These are movements of lower intensity and work on smaller muscle groups that are used in the handstand push-up. You should do these after you have completed your strength work for the day to help address any limitations you may have. The hollow body hold is great for conditioning your core and involves laying on your back and lifting your arms and legs off of the ground. The Superman is essentially a reverse hollow body hold where you lift your arms and feet off of the ground while laying on your stomach. This will also help condition your lower back and your arm elevation to allow for a straighter line in the handstand. Next up is the L-sit, which is a great exercise for strengthening your core at a compressed angle. Reverse leg extensions can also help keep your handstand stable and conditioning the movement of extending your legs behind your back while entering the handstand. Finally, you could also do some banded bicep curls and tricep extensions to condition the stability of your arms. Now I'm going to show you how I would structure a handstand push-up training session. You are always going to want to start with a warm-up for at least 10 to 15 minutes where you simply just move the joints and muscles that you will be using that session. Skipping your warm-up is only going to make your training session more difficult and increase the likelihood of injury. If you have mobility limitations, such as in your shoulders or hamstrings, you can address these by doing a couple sets of dynamic stretches during your warm-up. You can also practice your balancing movements before you jump into your strength sets, as it is a great way to warm up. After you have completely warmed up, I would ramp up to the hardest progression I am working on by doing a few reps of the easier progression and increasing the difficulty. After this, I would do between 3 to 6 sets of the hardest progression that I am working on. These sets can also be attempts if you cannot yet do a single rep. I would recommend keeping your rep ranges between the 2 and 6 rep range to focus on building strength. When you are done with these, I would move down a progression and do 3 sets of around 80% of my max capacity of the previous progression, and I would then repeat again for the next preceding progression. Finally, I would pick 2 exercises from the conditioning section to complete my workout. If you still feel like you have a lot of mobility limitations, you can address these by doing static stretches after your workout. So that's all for me in terms of this tutorial for learning the handstand push-up. If you have any further questions or suggestions for future videos you'd like to see, feel free to leave them in the comments below. In the description you can also find the link to my program if that's something you're interested in. And I'd appreciate if you'd like and subscribe if you are enjoying these more long form informational guide videos. But anyways, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.